Excellency, Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao was born in Zimbabwe to Ghanaian parents. She migrated to the United States of America in 1977. A medical doctor by profession, she is the CEO and founder of Bell Family Medical Centers in the United States. In 2017, she was appointed the African Union Ambassador to the U.S. On October 7, 2019, she received notice that she was no longer permanent ambassador after she spoke out about France's continued exploitation of its former colonies. The AU received worldwide backlash for not standing by her. Dr. Chihombori-Quao founded the African Diaspora Development Institute, ADDI, to provide a one-stop platform for information about Africa. She seeks to reunite African nations and the worldwide diaspora.
My guest is a woman that has been described as a modern-day African heroine. She's a medical doctor by profession, a businesswoman, and an activist. She's a former African Union ambassador to the United States. Recently, she made headlines worldwide for speaking boldly about the exploitation of African countries by France. I'm talking about Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao. Hello, madam. How are you doing?
Doing very well, Patricia. Thank you for having me.
I've always wondered, you were very successful in the medical field. What made you decide to go into activism or advocacy work other than what you were doing as a medical doctor?
I went to Washington really reluctantly, not knowing what difference I was going to make. Because as you can imagine, the transition from being a medical doctor to being a diplomat. I came to Washington. I thought I'd left my stethoscope and my lab coat back in Tennessee, but I brought the doctor in me with me. And I started diagnosing what I felt were the issues pertaining to us Black people, to the continent of Africa. Now that I was given a platform to represent 1.27 billion people on the continent and to represent the 250 million in the Americas, I made a decision that I would represent the people I was sent to Washington to represent. That I did fearlessly and without regard for what the consequences would be.
Speaking out against France was a very bold step. Now, when you actually did bring these things to the knowledge of the general public, the international community, did you expect the kind of reaction that you got? Both from the African Union, at the end of the day, they actually terminated your appointment, and then from people around the world, how they came out to support you and to actually speak out for you. Did you expect to receive this kind of response when you spoke out?
I did not expect to get the support that I received from the people. I knew there would be consequences, particularly coming from France. I was sent here to do a job, and I did that. I represented the people I was sent here to represent, and for that I have no regrets, and I'll do it again.
Speak about what it is that France is actually doing, because I know some people watching this interview may not really understand the depth and the years of exploitation that has gone on. I would like you to speak a little bit about that.
Well, the one thing that was quite shocking for me is how much people were not aware of the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, which is the document that France made its former colonies sign as they were getting their quote-unquote independence. You think they would have given it a different name, but it was so blatant. What was so special and what was so deplorable about this document? One, the document said the former French countries must agree to deposit, at that time, it was 85% of their bank reserves with the Central Bank of France under the control of the French Minister of Finance. France will then take all these deposits collectively and invest the deposits in the French stock market under the French name, and the countries may or may not know the returns. France also said they were going to be the only ones to print the currency, the CFA, for these 14 countries. They also said should these countries wish to access some of their money that they have deposited with the French Central Bank, they would have to submit their country's financial statement. And if approved, they could only access it as a loan at commercial interest rate, and they could only access 20% of their deposits from the previous year. You are now going from depositing 85% of your bank reserves with France. Now, if you want some of it, you have to apply for it as a loan at commercial interest rate. In addition, they also said all the minerals discovered and yet to be discovered, all the oil discovered yet to be discovered, French companies had the first right of refusal. To this day, this continues to be the case. They also said all your military will be trained by France. You could only buy military equipment from France, and that in the event of war, these countries could only align themselves with France, and these countries were forbidden from having military alliances with their neighboring countries who are actually their brothers and sisters. To put things in perspective, the African Union has said Africa today needs $100 billion a year for the next 10 years in order to completely build out the African infrastructure. That is only 2 years of takings by France. How could something so horrible, so blatantly bad, have been going on the continent and people just did not know? The reason the majority of the African countries are not in control of their economies is because the colonizers are the companies owned by former colonial masters. They are the companies that are the majority of the employers in most African countries. The big multi-corporations in African countries, if you were a former British colony, the majority of the companies in your country, the multinationals, are British. If you were a former French colony, the majority of the multinationals in your country are French. Belgium, the same thing. Germans, the same thing. Italians, Portuguese. So these multinationals, they have safe havens. Through these safe havens, they're underreporting what they're mining, what they're extracting out of Africa. They're underreporting what they're selling for. They take their funds into these safe havens, which were created during colonization, and we have never been able to close that loophole. Through safe havens alone, these multinationals are not paying taxes. You look at what is happening in the DRC. You have tarmacs in the middle of the jungle. 747s are flying into the jungle, picking up minerals and flying right out. The illegal logging, the illegal fishing, the illegal trade in wildlife and plants. The abuse is humongous. Trillions of dollars are getting out of Africa every year because of all this exploitation. I often say, on the continent, the colonizers are sitting in our home, eating our food on our table, the food that we would have cooked for them. And after we put it on the table, we go under the table and we wait for them to drop a few crumbs down. And while we are under the table, they are busy putting systems in place to make us fight over which brother, which sister got a larger crumb under the table, so we never have to talk about what is going on the table. You see, no amount of education can decolonize you. No amount of education can get rid of the legacy of slavery. No Harvard degree, no Yale degree, no Oxford degree. We have to understand that we were systematically brainwashed. As Black people, as a race, no matter where we are on the earth, our minds must heal. We are a wounded people. Berlin Conference was a policy that was put in place to see to it, not only that we are completely defeated and dominated from exploitation by being divided into the tiny little countries, but they also messed with our minds. How do I, a Black mother, raise my children at home, telling my children that you're Black and you're beautiful, but when they step outside the door, the world is surrounding them with nothing but negativity about that which they represent, which is being Black? How do you raise a child with good self-esteem And then a white child is being told, you are better, you are more beautiful, you are preferred, and when they step outside the door, everything they represent is validated. How do these two children grow up as equal? Heal thyself, wake yourself up, decolonize yourself, and understand that you have been a victim of some serious brainwashing strategy, but that you can prevail. While we may be in the valley today, united, we will make it.
The World Bank, says that out of the 28 poorest countries in the world, 27 of them are in Africa, and it takes two to tango. I must say that a lot of the African leaders have actually played ball with the oppressors. What do you think about the fact that Africa has a leadership deficit?
How bad do things have to get before we can say enough is enough? Yeah. This nonsense has got to come to an end. Tell it to the children, tell it to the youth who are unemployed, that it's okay for France to take $500 billion out of the continent. Tell it to the children who are starving to death in Africa, millions of them. Tell it to the mothers who are dying while giving birth to another life. Talk to them, millions of them. Talk to those millions. That's what I'm talking about. Because all that exploitation, it needs to stop. And that means calling out all of them, the ones with the 50 billion and the ones with 500 billion. And by the way, that is only France and the actual cash coming out. We're not talking about the multinationals from all the former colonizers. We are talking trillions coming out of Africa every year.
I like what you said there about speaking out, because based on the fact that you boldly, confronted what France was doing to its former colonies, the French Parliament has actually decided to change things now. But my question is, how can all this monies that have been taken out of Africa and resources, not just by the French government, but by other colonial masters or multinationals, be recouped?
We're the largest group of countries who are members of the UN. Nothing really, the UN is doing nothing for us. We are there to simply say, was Africa present? We give them 55 votes as a continent. It is my humble opinion that if I had my way, all the African heads of states should stop paying back the loans that they were given by IMF and World Bank. Those loans have been paid a gazillion times over. Those loans have been, some of them go back to colonization. Those loans were frivolous loans. They're predatory loans. They are loans with extremely high interest rates. The average African country is spending over 30% of their GDP to go towards loan repayment. That is not sustainable, and they know it. So they want to continuously keep African countries chasing our tails, forever paying the loans, so we never get out of we can never dig ourselves out of the economic doldrums that most African countries find themselves in. It's all by design. So again, we should not be paying back those loans. Why should countries that need a break and should be having these low interest loans be stuck with the highest interest rates, while countries that don't need a break, the first world countries, they're the ones that get the lowest interest rates? Why is it that we are being forced to devalue our currencies when we are the ones with the gold? And those of us in the diaspora, we too must refuse to be divided. African Americans thinking they're different from continental Africans, African Caribbean thinking they're different, the Afro-Latinos thinking they're different. Let's face it, when African American man is walking down the street and a continental African man is walking down the street, what do people see? People see two black men. What unites us is our blackness. And we must accept and understand that we are Africans first and foremost. We are Africans first and foremost. The Jews, they are Jewish first. They can have their own differences and their own little divisions internally, but first and foremost, they're Jewish. And they understand Israel is home. As Africa, we must let our children in the diaspora know that Africa is home, that they are welcome with open arms.
I was going to ask you about George Floyd because I know you actually also released a statement this morning, which I saw. Now, the anti-Black racism that persists not just in America, in Canada, and around the world has continually incarcerated Black men, economically affected, people of African descent, in these places. What have you to say about this? And what do you think is a solution? Because as you said, there will be riots for a few weeks. We've seen this happen before. And then everybody goes back to their, regular duties, and then we see it happen again. And I'm sure there's so many cases that are happening that we do not, hear about because there are no people there with cameras to film. So what do you think can be done about this situation? Because I think that something tangible, strategic has to be done because enough is enough.
Enough is enough indeed. I think the situation with Black people around the globe is a very sad one. When you look at what we have been subjected to, I often say any other race would have been extinct. If we look at the African Americans to begin with, look at the horrendous conditions under which they were transported from Africa to the Americas. And still, they survived. And still, they rose. The women were raped. The men were beaten up and lynched. They were tortured. And still, they rose. They fought until they were, quote unquote, freed as slaves. They proceeded to subject them to discrimination, to lack of access to opportunities, and still the Black American has risen. I've met many good white people, and I have many good white people who are my friends, so don't get me wrong. We have elements within the white race that are just racist to the core. They're the same ones, if you go back to slavery, they're the same ones who did not want to see slavery come to an end. That small percentage of racist white people has percolated through from one generation to the other. They try to tell us that the devil is Black. No, the devil is based on deeds. That police officer, when he could kneel so comfortably, hands in his pocket, so relaxed, greasing George's neck against the concrete, and thought nothing of it. That is the personification of a devil. That is a devil. You were looking at him, that is the devil. What kind of a human being would regress to that level? To where you can sit there. George was begging for his life, calling for his mom. You are sitting on his neck. He is begging for his life. And even after, he no longer has life in his body, and the pulse is checked, and he has no pulse. For 3 more minutes, he wanted to make sure what he started was completed. He still did not let go. That is a devil. I would like to say to those Black people who are feeling demoralized right now, to those Black people who are feeling hopeless, defeated, I want you to know that you are the most beautiful human beings I've ever met. And I like to describe you, as I always say, you are the beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible Black race.
You've achieved unimaginable success in your career as an entrepreneur, as a leader. What have you to say to a young woman out there who's watching right now regarding, the fact that they can achieve anything? What have you to say to them?
I know we have been relegated to second-class citizens as women, but that is far from the truth. You see, I tell my children, as you leave the house every day, look at yourself in the mirror. You're just as good, you're just as beautiful, you're just as capable as anybody else out there. Those who choose to tell you you're ugly, those who choose to tell you you can't, just take a look at them and say, I feel sorry for you are mistaken. I am the best creation the good Lord has ever created. I know who I am, and I do not need validation from you or anybody else. And the buck stops there.
You had mentioned your grandkids. I was just, curious to know how many kids and grandkids you have.
I have 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls, and I have 5 granddaughters, 4 grandsons and 1 granddaughter.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's amazing. They must be really proud of you.
To be honest with you, I was talking to one of my grandkids, and I think he was playing with his iPad, and he tapped his name, and a video of me popped up. He was with his friends, and of course, they started watching me. So one of the kids say, "So that's your grandmother. What does she do?" And the grandkid says, "She does something important with Africa." So to them, it doesn't matter. They just know I do something important with Africa. I thought that was really nice. To them, it doesn't matter. They understand that grandma is speaking on behalf of Black people, and that's good enough for them.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chihombori, for taking time out of your busy schedule to grant us this interview. And we've learned so much today, and I want to say that I wish you continued success in everything that you do. Do take care.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Take care. Yeah, bye-bye.